And thank you yet again, Lorraine, for those very meaningful words that you've brought to every one of the council meetings since I've been the mayor. It is very much appreciated by me, and I know that you're a very busy person, and but you are quite welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you choose, but I'm sure that you'll take the opportunity to slip out when it's appropriate. But again, sincerely, thank you for being my few minutes celebrate this year. It's been wonderful. Thank you. Okay, can we make a start? It is now 6:05 by the clock on the wall. So, again, welcome everybody to this last council meeting of this council term. And item one, as always, is apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Jeff Cox, Chris Elmore, who is going to try and get you. And I was going to say Bronwyn Brooks, who was running a little bit late due to traffic on the A470, but she has arrived just in time. Are there any other apologies that need to be given? Nope. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 2 then, which is the roll call of members and to receive any declarations of interest.
Councillor Julie Aviett. Councillor Anthony Bennett. Councillor Richard Burton. Councillor Janice Birch. Councillor Rhiannon Birch. Councillor Jonathan Bird. Councillor Bronwyn Brooks. Councillor Liz Burnett. Councillor Claire Curtis. Councillor Pamela Drake. Councillor John Drysdale. Councillor Kate Edmonds. Councillor Stuart Egan.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Chris Franks. Councillor Eric Hacker. Councillor Howard Hamilton. Councillor Val Hartree. Councillor Keith Hatton. Councillor Nick Hodges. Councillor Jeff James. Councillor Hunter Jarvie. Councillor Gwyn John. Councillor Fred Johnson. Councillor Ian Johnson. Councillor Maureen Kelly Owen. Councillor Peter King. Councillor Kevin Marnie. Councillor Anne Moore. Councillor Neil Moore. Councillor Andrew Parker. Councillor Bob Penrose. Councillor Anthony Powell. Councillor Audrey Preston. Councillor Rhona Probert. Councillor Adam Riley. Councillor Gwyn Roberts. Councillor John Thomas. Councillor Ray Thomas. Councillor Rodri Traherne. Councillor Stefan William. Councillor Margaret Wilkinson. Councillor Clive Williams. Councillor Chris Williams. Councillor Eddie Williams.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
That brings us on to agenda item 3 then, which is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of March. Leader?
Yeah, can I formally move, Mr Mayor?
For me second.
Council happy for me to sign them? Thank you. Agenda item 4 then is to receive any announcements, and I think there are a few this evening. So I will start off, obviously by saying that I know that there are a number of councillors that are standing down at the election, me included. So I'd like to wish all those councillors that won't be seeking election this time around all the very best for the future. During this term of my office, I have continued to attend civic functions, both inside and outside the Vale of Glamorgan, including charity events. I went to the Dow Corning Science Week. That was a wonderful experience. I made bath bombs and bubble bath with the children from Surrey Primary School. Also attended the rugby festival that was held in Cowbridge Comprehensive, and a wonderful 2 days with teams from all over South Wales being represented. I would like to thank the Deputy Mayor and Mayoress and Councillor Margaret Wilkinson for attending 100th birthday parties on my behalf. It was also my great pleasure to welcome the Leadership CAF Management Committee to congratulate them on their outstanding UK award. The Mayoral Office also officially welcomed Her Majesty's new Lord Lieutenant for South Glamorgan, Mrs Morfydd Meredith, and I would like to thank the Deputy Mayor and Mayoress for hosting this event at short notice. Fundraising for my charities has continued with a successful St David's Day concert, the very memorable and enjoyable whisky tasting event, and a marvellous Mayor's Ball. My charity cookbook has sold over 150 copies, with orders still coming in. And the Landock Orchard has now been officially launched. Our orchard, which is its name, will be accessible to all patients to enable them to enjoy the outdoors, the wildlife, trees and plants, by allowing them to escape the confines of a traditional hospital ward. A fruit orchard with local indigenous trees will be created that will eventually be able to cultivate and harvest, as well as pathways and nature routes accessible for all, so they can enjoy the wildflower meadows and local wildlife. The orchard will also be open to all in the local community, providing an ideal space for exploring nature. Dr. Rhys Jones, the ecologist, researcher and wildlife environmentalist, is the ambassador of the orchard and will offer his expertise and knowledge of the site through official walks through the orchard space. I am very proud to have made this project one of my mayoral charities, and I would like to thank everyone who has supported the fundraising so far for their generous support. Thank you. And I believe the leader would like to say a few words as well now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would. Can I say, they say a week is a long time in politics. 5 years, I think, is probably an age. Being leader of the council has been enjoyable and frustrating at the same time, but most of all, it's been a privilege. Can I also thank everybody for their patience and indeed their support, or indeed their opposition, because indeed there has to be opposition when we have a council. So can I thank everybody for that? Clearly there are 15 members of the council who are going to say their goodbyes. Some of them have given a lifetime service to local government, and I think they should all be congratulated. There are 15. I am going to mention one or two, if you don't mind, and it will only be one or two. There's the experience that we will lose. There's Audrey, and there's Maureen, clearly. Eric, he was been a stalwart to me. He was a stalwart to me in one of the first years of my reign, if you want, if I want it that way. And he took over and we had the Eisteddfod, and he was a great ambassador. Janice, I've been a friend of Janice's for a very, very long time, and she has supported me every year. But there's one person I suppose I can't ignore, and that's obviously Jeff. So Jeff, you will be leaving us. I think you are the longest concurrent member of the council, if you take into account the old council and this council. As I said, it's a lifetime of service to the community, and I know that you were on the Roos Community Council before that too. So can I thank you? We've had our disagreements, we've had our arguments, we've had our pints together, we've had our good times together. So can I say to you and to everybody else who was retiring, good luck, have a good time. But clearly I can't go away without saying thank you to Stuart. Stuart was my deputy for a considerable period of time during this term. He's been a superb mayor, and can I also wish him the best of luck. And to everybody else who's out on the stomping grounds, good luck. We'll see who comes back on the 5th of May. So that's all I want to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. I understand that we have two petitions tonight being presented by Councillor Franks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One relates to a request for improved public transport, specifically a late-night bus service from Cardiff Central to the Vale of Glamorgan. And the second petition relates to the council's proposal to demolish St Paul's Church building, Arcot Street, Penarth, and the petition opposes this move. Thank you.
Agenda item 5 then is the use of the Managing Director's emergency powers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a matter for noting.
Great. Thank you. Agenda item 6 then is the review of the Council's Constitution Officer Delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. This is to facilitate the transfer of an officer delegation given the retirement of the Council's Head of Strategic ICT. Basically what it does is it changes the delegation from, as it was, Dave Vining to Caris, our Head of Finance. So basically what it is, because that post is now going to be deleted, then we're just changing the delegation. Can I move that the responsibility for data protection issues as set out in section 1616 1A of and C of the financial procedure rules contained in the Council's constitution be transferred to the Head of Finance, and the financial procedure rules and constitution be amended accordingly. But can I also add that can we ask that this is with immediate effect, on the basis that although Dave is no longer in the office, he's contractually with us until April, so I think it would be better for us to do it immediately with immediate effect, so that if there are any issues, then Caris can deal with them straight away. Can I formally move?
Okay, is that agreed? Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item 7 then, 7A first, and I believe Bronwyn, you're going to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Leader. This has already been to Cabinet. This is the housing business plan for, it's actually a financial forecast, the whole business plan, for a 30-year financial model, which is what we're required to do for Welsh Government. I'm just going to raise, actually sort of itemise a couple of things about the average rents. They're assumed to be increased by inflation plus 1.5% annually until 2018-19, and then the increase will revert to inflation plus 1%. These assumptions are in line with Welsh Government policy on housing rents. And then the other highlight I'd like to just point out is that the plan was able to afford a new build and regeneration scheme of 28.02 million in the first 5 years to 21-22, and a further 177.65 million in years 6 to 30. And then all other revenue, income and expenditure was based on the 2017-18 budget. As I said, it's already been to Cabinet, and we did use Article 14.14 of the Council's Constitution about the urgent decision procedure. We used that to actually enable a draft copy of the housing business plan to be sent to Welsh Government on the 3rd of April, with the proviso that a final version will be sent following Council approval on the 26th of April 2017. So I'd like to move that report.
Formally second.
Is that agreed? Thank you. That brings us on to 7B then. Leader?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report about non-domestic rates and high street rates relief scheme 2017-18. Again, this went to Cabinet on Monday. It basically is fairly simple, really. Is that it's fairly simple in terms of the resolution. In terms of working the scheme is maybe not so simple. But however, we're asking Council to confirm the adoption of the high street rates relief scheme for 2017-18. It's only for 1 year, in respect of qualifying business premises within the Vale of Glamorgan area and discretionary relief powers in accordance with Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act. Basically, there's been a re-evaluation, as you all know, of the business rates. This is a scheme which has been brought in by Welsh Government. It lasts for 1 year. There are 2 tiers. One tier is a relief and then there's a second tier, which are covered within the report itself. Basically, what we've also done is we've extracted data from our records. Anybody who we think is qualifying for it will automatically get a rate rebate, and they'll get an amended bill. Anybody else who thinks they're eligible, they can make an application and they can come to us. But in order for us to do that, then we have to resolve the resolutions which are before you, that we adopt the high street rate relief scheme for 17-18 in accordance with the provisions contained in Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act. And we resolve to award relief to all qualifying businesses as in accordance with the non-domestic rates high street rate relief guidance, which is issued and part of the report. And that we also resolve to automatically award entitlement to those qualifying businesses that can be identified through our records, and resolves also to award entitlement to the remaining businesses that may be eligible following receipt of an application form. I think it's something we dealt with under questions at the last council, so this is moving forward and allows us to give that relief. Can I formally move?
Okay. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you for that, Leader. This £10 million came about as a result of the budget deal that took place in the National Assembly last autumn. Although it's temporary, it does offset some of the problems that have come about as a result of the revaluation, which has strongly affected businesses locally here in Vale. I'm very pleased that we will be granting that automatically where it's possible. That was the question I asked at the last full council you recently referred to. I'll just clarify on one point and then a question on another. Firstly, obviously there are 2 different tiers with different amounts. I'm sure I was concerned that there may be some businesses at the sort of the cliff edge who may do slightly worse because of their tier 1 status rather than tier 2, and was clarifying if we know of any situations where that's the case and if that can be dealt with in one form or another. And then, and I don't expect you to have the answers tonight, perhaps something that could be reported at some point in future regarding the number of businesses in each of the high street areas in the Vale that have benefited as a result of this, so that we can see the impact this policy has had in offsetting the revaluation impact that's been taking place.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Yes, I'm very happy to accept that. As far as tier 1 and tier 2 are concerned, there are strict requirements. There are guidance which is there. We have to adhere to that clearly, so that if there is anybody on the brink, so to speak, there is a reference in here that there's some transition between the two, and it's covered within the report itself. And yes, I'm sure we can have a report back to show how many people have been in receipt of either tier 1 or tier 2. But clearly there are going to be some who may not have any. But we can always report that back. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification, Ida. Members can see the recommendations in front of them. Be moved and seconded. Happy to accept? Thank you. That brings us on to item 7C then, and I believe, Gwyn, you're going to take this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shared Regulatory Services review of the joint working agreement. In April 2015, Bridgend County Borough Council and the City of Cardiff and ourselves signed a joint working agreement for the provision of regulatory services across the 3 council areas. The document created the Shared Regulatory Service, SRS, and the Shared Regulatory Services Joint Committee. At the time of creating the joint working agreement, some of the provisions were conceptual in nature, and over the last 18 months it was evident that some aspects of the agreement required amending to allow the more effective operation and management of the service. Some of the changes proposed in the report were administrative in nature, while others advocated a change in current operating practices. The changes have been considered by the Officer Management Board for the shared service, all 3 Section 151 officers, and agreed as appropriate by the Joint Committee. The proposed changes are set out in paragraphs 7 to 11 of the report in front of you. Given the size of the deed of variation, which included as schedule the conformed agreement, i.e. the joint working agreement with the track changed amendments in line with the deed of variation, the deed of variation excluding the conformed agreement was attached at Appendix A to the report, with a complete copy of the deed of variation including the conformed agreement being available in the members' room for consideration. Now this report went through Cabinet on Monday and was approved, and tonight I'm recommending to you for your approval that 1, the proposed changes to the joint working agreement between the partner councils for the provision of regulatory services as set out in the deed of variation be approved. 2, that the delegated authority be granted to the head of legal services in consultation with the senior responsible officer with responsibility for the shared regulatory service to approve administrative changes to the joint working agreement in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Visible, Leisure and Regulatory Services, as long as there is no extension of delegations to the shared service or additional financial implications. And 3, that the head of legal services be authorised to execute the required deed of variation reflecting changes when approved by the Council. Thank you.
Can I formally second?
Everybody happy with those recommendations? Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item 8 then.
Mr. Mayor.
They're on for
They are for noting. They are the use of the urgency decision under 1414. They are for noting. That's A, B and C. You do them all together.
Yep. Council happy that we note those? Thank you. Moving on then to agenda item 9, which is to receive questions from councillors. And we'll start off with question number 1 from Councillor Traherne. And we did miss you at the last meeting, Councillor Traherne, so I'm really pleased that you've got a number of questions in this evening.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillor Traherne. The provision of top-class education facilities for all our children has played a major role in pushing up achievement across the Vale, so that we're now placed second in Wales and aim to be the best. Investment of well over 80 million over the past 5 years has meant that children across the Vale are now being educated in schools that are truly fit for the 21st century. Penarth Learning Community and Lantwick Learning Community being 2 examples, and we plan to do more with our commitment to invest even more, which includes the provision of top-class secondary schools in Barry. At an individual pupil level, there's an expectation that all pupils should be challenged and targets should reflect high expectations for future achievement of all pupils. Targets for more able pupils would therefore be set at a higher level. Individual pupil targets are aggregated into cohort and school level targets, and targets are agreed with schools' challenge advisors who monitor and track the extent to which all pupils are on track to achieve their targets during the course of the academic year. Through benchmarking and the All Wales core data, the performance of individual schools is compared with similar schools, and this includes the performance of more able pupils. We're working in partnership with the Welsh Government and schools to support our most academically able young people through the creation of the SEREN network. The network has been established to increase the proportion of young people from Wales making successful applications to top universities. Through a series of events, workshops and masterclasses, the most academically able students in the Vale have received the motivation and support they need to develop the skills, knowledge and confidence required to successfully apply for places at the most prestigious universities.
Councillor Treherne, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Chief Inspector of Schools, Mr. Rowlands, has stated publicly that schools have focused on a performance measure which requires pupils to get 5 GCSEs at grade A star to C. This, he said, encouraged schools to focus on the borderline between C and D grades. And it's of note that Claire Morgan, the Strategic Director of Estin, stated that the focus on this particular performance indicator had stifled the progress of more able learners. Do you think that Estin's findings are relevant to schools here in the Vale of Glamorgan?
I think the issue for the Vale of Glamorgan is what the Vale is doing to ensure its pupils that are more talented and able reach their full potential. And that is the question that we look at and we will continue to measure going forward. It's also relevant to recognise that not all talent is academic. You are looking at the more talented and able. So, in fact, looking at the Inspiring the Vale bursaries that we actually established, at least 3 of those winners were in school, the bursary winners, at the time of their award. One recently contacted me to let me know his work is now being showcased at the Tate. And also, in terms of our 21st Century Schools programme, the sports facilities that are being delivered will also help our most sporting abled young people. So for us, we actually are benchmarking against the best in the UK now, not just against the best in Wales.
That brings us on to question number 2 then, again, which is from Councillor Treherne to the Cabinet Member of Housing and Social Care and Health.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Treherne. On the 5th of April, the Director of Social Services sent a letter to providers setting out a proposed uplift in the Council's 2017-18 rates for purchased community care services. As you are aware, this year's fee setting has taken place in a context where there are significant budget challenges, both for social services specifically and also for the Council as a whole. As a consequence, we have been obliged to make very difficult decisions about all areas of expenditure to remain within budget this year. This meant that the only feasible option regarding increased fees for purchase services was to match the baseline budget increase for social services as a whole, i.e. 1%. We are aware that the independent sector is seeking additional remuneration at a much higher level because of the difficult circumstances they face, including issues regarding recruitment and retention of staff. Discussions and negotiations are ongoing. We know that Welsh Government has agreed additional funding for social care in the current financial year. Firstly, the Minister for Social Services and Public Health, Rebecca Evans, announced in January 2017 an extra £10 million of new funding to help ensure that the social care sector is strong and sustainable for the future. She has also stated that this funding will help meet the extra costs associated with the introduction of the national living wage. To date, we have received no further information about the level of funding that's been allocated to the Vale, how we can access this money or its intended use. And that is, we are actually pursuing that and should have some news soon. Secondly, Finance Secretary Mark Drakeford announced on the 27th of March 2017 that the Welsh Government will invest an additional £20 million in social care in 2017-18. Again, there isn't any specific information available about the level of funding that's been allocated to the Vale, its intended use or the time frame, but again, we're chasing that up for that information. As you appreciate from what I've just told you, it's not possible at this stage to make any specific plan about how far the additional finance can be used to fund services purchased from providers and requests for increases in fee levels. However, I can assure you that this will be given serious consideration when we know definitely the intentions of Welsh Government. At that point, we will resume as a matter of urgency negotiations with providers as part of our normal processes for setting fee levels.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, thank you for your response, Cabinet Member. I think members will be aware that the independent sector provides 96% of the domiciliary care commissioned by this council and the Vale of Glamorgan. It is therefore essential, in my view, that the sector is able to run its businesses in a satisfactory manner. If we squeeze these providers too hard, some will go out of business, others may seek to take advantage of their staff who are already paid very little, whilst others may fail to provide the required standard of care to our elderly and vulnerable.
I'll let you get away with it on the last question under your supplementary. Can I have your question, please?
Does this concern you?
Rather than a statement.
Can't answer you without the microphone. Thank you, Councillor Traherne. We recognise the significant contribution that social care providers make to ensuring the welfare and well-being of some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. This administration has always sought to maintain positive working relationships with them and to support them as best that we can within the resource envelope available. As always, we've been willing to discuss the implications of providers both individually and collectively. Officers have been negotiating with those who have come forward, and we are grateful for this constructive dialogue, which the Council intends to continue in respect of fee levels, but also our joint committee to improving the quality of care for our citizens in need of support from social services.
Question number 3 then, again from Councillor Traherne, and this is to the Cabinet Member for Visible Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Traherne. Each incident of fly tipping is not individually priced, as in accordance with other councils, we record and report every occurrence to Natural Resources Wales (NRW) in a set format through performance management software used to monitor fly tipping across Wales. On this system, estimated expenditure is attributed to each incident, so NRW can capture an estimated cost of fly tipping. In 2015-16, fly tipping costs in the Vale of Glamorgan were estimated by NRW to be £13,057, the third lowest in Wales, and our lowest cost since 2006. In terms of the number of incidents, the largest increases were in Cardiff, increase of 2,309 incidents, and Swansea, an increase of 1,625 incidents. The largest percentage decreases were in the Vale of Glamorgan, 41%, and Wrexham, 33%. Across Wales, the proportion of fly tipping incidents involving household waste increased to 71% in 2015-16, from 67% in 2014-15, and an estimated fly tipping clearance costs in Wales have risen from 1.8 million in 2014-15 to 2.1 million in 2015-16.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The Cabinet member will be aware, of course, that there are many more fly tipping incidents in the Vale than the figures that he has just given us. Because, of course, a great deal of fly tipping takes place on private land and on public land away from the highway, and these figures are not collated by the council. But I digress. In view of the fact that the rural Vale is now almost completely devoid of any regular police presence, there doesn't seem to be, to me, very much that deters fly tipping. Are you able to tell members how many people have been prosecuted in the Vale of Glamorgan over the last 5 years for fly tipping?
Thank you, Councillor Traherne. Well, I haven't got those figures here, obviously, and I'll have to advise you of that. But I can assure you that whilst the evidence suggests we do not have major fly tipping problem when compared to many other local authorities, it is accepted we must remain vigilant and take action to deter those who could see the Vale as a fly tipping opportunity in the future. To this end, we will be organising a series of anti-fly tipping initiatives using 3GS, our environmental enforcement partners, during the next financial year 2017-18 as part of our environmental enforcement programme for the year. I'll attempt to get those figures for you, but as you're aware, there is an election next week and my time is running out in preparing these figures. Thank you very much.
Question number 4 then is again from Councillor Traherne to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Education.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Traherne. Schools and indeed councils across the nation have increasingly been placed under financial pressure as austerity continues. In addition to cost pressures and inflation, this council has seen cuts in funding over the past 5 years, over £16 million. However, we have prioritised funding for education, and alongside the major capital investment in schools, as mentioned in my earlier answer, we've protected schools by funding above the indicator-based assessment, or IBA, for every year of the current administration. Welsh Government requires each local authority to compare its total budget for education to its education indicator-based assessment and report on reasons for the difference. That report was included in the final revenue budget proposals considered by Council in March of this year. For 2017, as in each of the previous 4 years of this administration, we have funded education above the IBA. This year to the tune of £3 million. A stark contrast to the situation we inherited of 4 years of underfunding and an IBA deficit inherited of 979,000. We've worked collaboratively with schools over the last financial year to review the school's funding formula so that the distribution of funding across schools is equitable. The new allocation principles were unanimously approved by the school's budget forum on the 18th of January 2017. And when the school's budget forum met to consider the revenue budget for the current year, it put on record its recognition that as much funding as possible has been allocated to education from the Council's limited budget. It was, however, agreed that the chair of the budget forum, in collaboration with the leader of the Council, who was present at the meeting, would write to the Cabinet Secretary outlining their concerns over the total funding situation and to identify specific budget pressures schools are facing. Officers in the Learning and Skills Directorate continue to work closely with schools, supporting them with financial advice and guidance, and where necessary, assisting them to develop budget recovery plans.
Supplementary.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether you could tell me why the service level agreement between the Vale Council and Peterson Super Ely Primary School in regard to HR has increased by a staggering 42%.
I'm not sure how that specifically relates to this. I will have to get you a written answer.
Thank you. Question number 5 then, again from Councillor Traherne, and it's to the Cabinet Member of Housing and Social Care and Health.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Traherne. I think I've got your ultimate question. You're the last question, I think, isn't it, from you? Should I say I've got the dubious honour? This administration has every reason to be proud of its record in developing responsive and integrated social care, housing and health services on behalf of older people in the Vale of Glamorgan. I actually welcome this opportunity to describe some of these achievements. 1. The Council and its housing association partners provide over 1,300 units of accommodation dedicated to the use of older people, and that's out of 7,000. We have undertaken a massive programme of refurbishment to ensure that these are attractive homes with up-to-date facilities, including elimination of bed sits, scooter stores, broadband access and telecare. 2. In terms of providing specialist accommodation, we have an excellent track record. There are now 42 units of extra care in Golau Caredig. The step-down, step-up special facility properties are now in use at Redlands, Penarth, with 2 more being added in Cowbridge to serve the Western Vale. And in T-Dove and Barry, a new residential care setting provides a bridge between hospitals and homes through intensive reablement, and that's one that we actually opened very recently. 3. We have focused too on developing preventative services that help older people to remain within their own homes, despite physical or cognitive frailty. Our single point of access provides free information, advice and assistance. And we have created an integrated discharge service which has helped us to significantly reduce delayed transfer to care from acute hospitals, with a discharge coordinator and occupational therapist who can assess individual housing needs and help create appropriate packages of care. And our joint equipment store can provide and collect equipment and adaptations from households with an identified need. The Integrated Reablement Service has staff from across a range of professions and organisations working closely together without boundaries. And Councillor Traherne would be very well aware of the good work done by the Council to develop its own residential and domiciliary care services, while supporting a fragile independent sector to do the same. I could go on. However, we are not complacent. As in all sectors of social care, housing and health, there are considerable challenges from increasing demand. Older people, especially the very old, will make up a growing proportion of our population in the years ahead. Between 2019 and 2026, the projected percentage increase in population of people 84 plus is 36%. Of the whole population, it's 1%. And this is why we've just completed a comprehensive population needs assessment with our regional partners, and why we have started producing a service development plan in response. This will commit social care, housing and health to even more integration in providing effective health and support to older people. For example, this will be done through A, ensuring that new building developments are fit for a population which is growing older, and that they will provide a variety of housing options to meet different needs. B, more joint commission and strategic use of the Integrated Care Fund. C, piloted intergenerational projects in communities to make them more supportive and aware of issues such as dementia. And D, making best use of community resources and assets such as GP, surgeries and healthy living hubs.
Supplementary.
Oh.
Mr Mayor, thank you. You're quite right in saying a great deal has been achieved, but my worry is that you failed to have a clear strategy going forward for accommodation with care for older people. And my belief is that this hasn't happened under this administration because you have not made it a corporate priority. And I would ask, in fact, I very much hope that the new administration will be of a slightly different colour to this one. But if we are unfortunate enough to have another Labour-led administration, can I ask that you undertake to make this a corporate priority, as a failure to do so will result in further drift when there really is, as you said, an urgent requirement to find a way forward to provide for the increasingly elderly population of the Vale.
I don't accept what you say, that we haven't done an awful lot corporately, because I think we've done a tremendous amount, more than's been done in previous administrations, I must add. It is, however, fair to say that our strategy for accommodation with care is set out in a wide range of documents, and the Council has produced some of them, such as the Local Housing Market Assessment or the Commissioner's Strategy for Older People. And others are regional documents generated within the work of the Regional Partnership Board, such as the Market Position Statement. I believe that everybody should work together and setting out an explicit strategy for this key area of work to help guide future decision making.
That moves us on then to question 6, which is from Councillor Riley to the Cabinet Member for Visible Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Riley. I'm surprised to receive this question, as I believe that our officers had dealt with your refuse and recycling collection service queries via email at the time. As has previously been explained, we suffered an unprecedented amount of unconnected refuse collection vehicle failures over a 2-day period in early March 2017, which caused the collection delays. The issues on separate vehicles include a blown turbocharger, a broken hydraulic pipe, an anti-lock brake system fault, a power take-off fault, a broken road spring, and an electrical fault. An investigation concluded that none were a result of inadequate maintenance or failures of our staff or systems. I would point out that our waste collections were not thrown into chaos, although it is recognised that, as a precautionary measure, we advised residents that at worst we would be operating 1 day behind schedule during the week of 6th of March 2017. Within 2 working days, the Waste Department had caught up with all collections, with the exception of 2 waste rounds. All waste was still collected on that particular week across the Vale. Members will be aware of the significant financial challenges facing this council. The Waste Department has achieved over 2 million of savings since 2010, and it continues to rank amongst the highest performing services in the council and indeed in Wales. This is demonstrated by the council's Public Opinion Survey 2016-17 at February 2017, where residents rate satisfaction with the council's green waste service at 98%, its food waste service at 98%, its co-mingled recycling facilities at 97%, and general waste collections at 91%. Despite the ongoing efficiency challenges, the council still maintains its status of the 3rd most effective waste service in Wales, and this source is from the WLGA 2015-16, and this represents expenditure of £133.30 per household per annum in 2016, £2.56 per household per week. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your answer. I note that we still don't know the ages of the vehicles involved, though. Nonetheless, the refuse collection day for Roos is Tuesday. More often than not recently, somewhere in the ward won't have part of their recycling collected until at least the following day. This week it was the turn of myself and my neighbours in East Aberthaw. Does the Cabinet Member think that the people of Roos Ward are unreasonable in expecting the council to collect their recycling and refuse on the day that it says it will?
Councillor Riley, I'm not saying that. I think basically the big issue at the moment is the fact that there are a huge amount of green bag waste going out, particularly over this last period. And quite honestly, when you've got the number of hours per day that we can actually drive our vehicles out, controlled by the laws of drivers, and basically you're bound to get problems when there's a huge amount of green waste particularly, and there are absolutely incredible amount at the moment. So that's where the snag does arise. But you see, the big problem basically is that if there's an issue, and there are very few issues we get, quite honestly, of the whole collection, the percentage we get is a very small number, and quite honestly, we make sure that we get them the next day or as soon as possible. There are a couple of issues that do arise from time to time, Nobody's perfect, but at the same time, when you consider that in the Vale of Glamorgan, we're the second highest in Wales for the collections of 65%. Now that leaves a lot behind. And I would refer you to our neighbours at Bridgend. I know it doesn't help you in Roos, but our neighbours at Bridgend were actually run by private collections. They're absolute chaos down there. So, quite honestly, I think we're doing very, very well in the Vale of Glamorgan. And if you have any issues, you've only had to got to contact the council. Thank you. And I just like to point out as well that we operate 26 refuse collection vehicles. Of these, 21 are owned and 5 are hired. Vehicles are generally depreciated over a 7-year period, though can be kept to slightly longer in their operating costs, are still within the acceptable margins. Currently, we have 5 vehicles in operation that are over 7 years old, and a number of 6 years old. And we have 12 new refuse collection vehicles on order, with delivery expected in 2 phases during September this year and January next year. So we've got the matter in hand, but of course we now have got to consider in the future, which the council will have to consider in future, where they're going on the future of collection. We have stuck with commingle. This administration believe that is the best way forward, but the Welsh Government would prefer us to do the blueprint. And if we do the blueprint, which means basically all waste being separated, and that will require the necessary vehicles for that. So it's not an easy issue to change everything, but I do think that we're doing an excellent job, and I would like to congratulate the staff for doing so.
Before I move on to the next question, can I remind all councillors about respecting the people that are speaking, respecting the councillors that have actually asked the question. There is too much talk going on, and it's not whispering because I can hear you up here. And it's unfair for the councillor that's asked the question to have people whispering alongside them. And I'm not picking on any particular group. It's every group in this chamber yet again whispering and talking during procedures. And it's disrespectful. Can I please ask you to refrain from doing it? Question 7 then is from Councillor Riley, again to the Cabinet Member for Building Services, Highways and Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Riley. I'm not aware of any significant concerns about the cleanliness of our cycleways, and I'm certainly not aware that such problems would be affecting their use. I would, however, be more than happy to arrange inspections if you have any specific examples that can be brought to my attention. There are, however, different categories of cyclists, the main reasons being that the more confident cyclists do not use the shared use cycle routes is due to the speed that they can travel and their ability to pass through junctions quicker on the road. Under the Welsh Government's Active Travel Initiative, those who don't currently walk or cycle to facilities regularly are encouraged to do so, enabling a modal shift from the car and encouraging a healthier lifestyle. This involves publishing a network maps for walking and cycling where practicable, improving the infrastructure to encourage cycling and walking. I'm sure you'll appreciate that we cannot make people cycle, though we would always seek to maintain and create and maintain the appropriate infrastructure to encourage a whole range of cycling activities.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you again for your answer. Would the Cabinet Member think that it makes financial sense to spend large amounts of public money on expensive assets like cycle lanes, but then not sweep them to the level that render them fit for purpose?
No, we don't. I think is no, I don't think it's we're a waste of money to spend the money on creating the cycle lanes, but I don't accept your premise that they are unusable because they're not swept enough.
Moving on then to question number 8, which is from Councillor Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Housing, Social Care and Health.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. A planning application was submitted in 2012 in preparation for the refurbishment of the remaining 17 Hawksley bungalows owned by the council. It was intended this work would be delivered through the framework contract delivering WHQS. As part of the delivery of WHQS, tenants had expressed a preference for internal works to be delivered first prior to the external works programme, and subsequently the external works were delayed at these properties whilst the internal WHQS programme was progressed. In April 2014, one of the Hawksley bungalows became vacant, and the opportunity was taken to conduct an in-depth investigation into the structural condition of the steel frame. During this investigation, it was found that the steel frame had deteriorated considerably and would need more work than was originally planned and put forward in the first planning application. Structural engineers investigating the level of repair required found the most economical solution would be to remove the existing steel structure and replace it with block cavity walls. Additionally, internal works to bring the property up to the WHQS requirements provided a whole new interior. This property was then used as a pilot project to ensure the property layouts and detailed working for this type of building, and the first unit was completed and let in December 2015. The remaining units were then awarded to the framework contractor for the area, who commenced work during 2016. The contractor did not make adequate progress and failed to complete any of the properties within a reasonable time frame. Subsequently, 12 of the remaining properties were withdrawn from this contractor's construction, and the remaining properties were tendered amongst the other framework contractors. Subsequently, of the original 17 properties, 10 have been completed, with a further 6 to be completed by June 2017.
Councillor Johnson.
Supplementary, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for that detailed entry. And as you will be aware, Tordoff Way, therefore, has been a building site for 3 years now, which is a very disappointing scenario. And I'm aware that other people in private properties have been affected by some of the building work as well, not going as it should do. I'm just clarifying what steps have been taken to ensure that this doesn't happen in any housing or building project in future, because this is clearly 5 years over a project is very disappointing.
I think the trouble is this actually turned out to quite a unique situation, and everywhere where we are doing works, issues have popped up, and some have taken longer, as in this instance where there are a lot more detailed work needed doing. So I think, you know, it's down to us when we're actually looking at the properties, and I think it's so important to carry out that very structural survey of them to actually make sure that the works we carried out then are fit for purpose. It is very unfortunate, and I totally agree, it has been a building site up there, and I think it's very unfortunate that the length of time the works have taken. But I do believe that the end results are looking good, as painful as it has been for the tenants, and for that I can only apologise to them for the amount of time that has taken.
Question number 9 then, again from Councillor Johnson, the Cabinet Member for Housing, Social Care and Health.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. The Council has reviewed the report of the Refugees and Asylum Seekers in Wales published by the Equality, Local Government and Communities Committee. It is important to note that because the Vale of Glamorgan is not an asylum dispersal area, many of the recommendations made by the committee to the Welsh Government to resolve the disparity between the experiences of and opportunities provided to asylum seekers and refugees in Wales do not directly impact on the services which are currently provided by the authority. I do believe, though, that the two-tier system is, however, a real concern and has been identified as a source of discontentment among the wider asylum seeking and refugee community by regional stakeholders in the Syrian resettlement programme, of which I sit on the board. The Vale of Glamorgan Council has tried to mitigate the impact where possible by encouraging the community to assist families who arrive outside the SRP through charitable donations and other volunteering opportunities. The report acknowledges that the pace of resettlement in Wales is dependent on both the preparedness of the local authorities in the short term and on the continued support of participants to achieve the aim of resettling 20,000 refugees by 2020. We've been working very closely with City of Cardiff Council to participate in the SRP's region, and we've established strategic and operational partnerships with key stakeholders to ensure smooth and effective delivery. I'll just have a quick reminder that since May 2016, we've resettled 4 families in the Vale of Glamorgan and 6 in Cardiff, and that fulfilled the initial pledge that we made. Furthermore, as part of our ongoing commitment, Cabinet has recently approved recommendations to extend participation for an additional 12 months and to maintain the same level of resettlement. An integration and support services provider was appointed to deliver services, and that was in line with the statement of requirements and through a series of bespoke support interventions, and in conjunction with a network of volunteers has successfully begun to integrate families into the receiving communities. To aid long-term integration, all families have enrolled with English for speakers of other language, which are commonly known as the ESOL classes, and receive weekly tuition from the Vale Learning Centre, and that's based within Barry Library, so that is quite central to where families are housed. Plans are being developed to further enhance learning and to provide extra classes using additional funding, which has recently been made available by the Home Office. As part of a policy decision not to use social housing, the authorities worked with Rent Smart accredited landlords to find suitable housing. And periodic inspections are carried out in order to maintain the quality of accommodation and to ensure that any tenancy issues are identified and resolved. And I've actually inspected a couple of these properties myself, just to ensure that integration and for the welcome that we extend here. Feedback from our families has actually been very positive, and there's an increased sense of optimism about the future, and that's despite the appalling circumstances that have led to their arrival here. If the Welsh Government accepts the recommendations made in the report, the authority will work with them to plan a response which is both appropriate to the social and economic needs of the authority and obviously the best interests of the community.
Thank you very much for that very detailed answer and support that's been provided so far. Just to clarify, because there was a lot of detail in there, we've so far received 4 families, and the suggestion was that we would be receiving another 4 within the next 12 months. Was that what was being implied in your response there? Or if that wasn't replied, could you clarify what the target is for the next 12 months, 17, 18?
Yes, that is what was being implied, yeah.
That moves us on to question 10 then, again from Dr Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Visible Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Unfortunately, we are unable to generate a report via our vehicle maintenance management database that identifies the number of refuse collection vehicle faults that resulted in refuse collection failures at the curbside. We do hold data on the amount of time that any vehicle is off the road for repairs, but this would not correlate with the waste collection delays, as generally we use the remaining fleet to pick up any areas where collections have missed for whatever reason. Whilst this becomes more difficult as the fleet size is reduced, it is still possible on most occasions. In one of my previous answers, I've explained the unprecedented number of vehicle failures over a 2-day period in March 2017 and the effects this had, but this is a rare situation.
Supplemental.
Thank you for that response and the previous answer to Councillor Riley. I'm a little bit confused. You've told us tonight that there are a large number of vehicles that have been purchased, but you've also told us that the reason for one of the problems is we don't know about commingling, what's going to happen in the future. Is the problem therefore that our vehicles are fatigued? Because I can't work out why you're buying lots of vehicles if you don't know what the future is, unless there's a problem with our vehicles' age.
Right, let's go back to square one. We told you earlier that the vehicles of age. I mentioned in my previous answer that number of age of the vehicles. We're replacing those vehicles that have reached that age. But I said that in the future we may have to change, depending on Council's decision, whether we went down that road of blueprint. And I'm sure at this present moment, I would think the majority of this Council would rather stay commingled. This is our point of view, is keeping the commingle. What commingle basically means is collecting everything together, not separate. So that's where we are there, okay? So we may in the future, and if that is forced on us by the Council decision, then we would be looking to the Welsh Government for grant aid to support purchasing those vehicles. But that's for the future. Currently, we're purchasing vehicles to cover those that are reaching the 6-7 year period. Thank you.
Right, that moves us on to question number 11, again from Dr Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Visible Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. In reply, there have been 263 fixed penalty notices issued by 3GS during the 6-month period, October 2016 to March 2017. 15 were in respect of general litter, 192 for cigarette butts, 41 in relation to commercial waste, 3 in relation to dog fouling, 4 in relation to fishing, 5 for spitting, and 1 for leaflet distribution. I think that might have been in Buttrell's ward. Thank you.
It wasn't me done for leaflet distribution. Mr. Mayor, that's a response of the 263 fixed penalty notices in 6 months. That's about 1.5 per day. Is this really having an effect on our litter problem?
Yeah, well, what I want to tell you there is, don't forget, when you prosecute someone, you've got to have the evidence that they dropped it. You just can't see litter somewhere. You've got to see people doing it. And don't take these figures exclude rescinded tickets or those issued in error to someone. So it's not something that you can just nab. Dog fouling, for example, is the most difficult of all to catch. And particularly you forget that these are during the winter period, the dark days, where a lot of these people take their dogs out in the dark morning and dark night. And it's very difficult. We could do a lot more, incidentally, we could do a lot more if we had more people who were prepared to report. Yep. But the biggest problem with people is they moan, but they won't do nothing about it. And they know the offenders. I know this situation in Lantford Major, and I've said to people, your name will not be included at all. Just give me their name by email. I don't mind, but I'll follow it up and do it and sort it out. And you can send them a letter warning them that they have been mentioned. We can't prosecute them because we haven't got the evidence there, but you've got to have it there. And that's where we are on this. Thank you.
That brings us on to question number 12 then, again from Dr. Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Visible Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'm enjoying this. Firstly, I would like to add my congratulations to Barrytown United on their promotion and much welcome return to the top league in Welsh football after some very difficult and challenging times. As a council, we have looked to work in partnership with the Reformed Football Club and have provided them support that has assisted with the progress they have made. Jenner Park, since the introduction of the 3G pitch, has seen unprecedented usage. The refurbishment of the Jenner Suite has been utilised by the club and other groups and works to ensure compliance with ground regulations for the Welsh Premier League have been completed. Moving forward, I am aware that the club is already in talks with our senior officers about future opportunities and has been for some time preceding their promotion into the Welsh Premier League. A key part of these discussions revolves around the benefits that increased exposure of the club can generate for the whole area. Thank you.
Thank you for that response, Councillor John. As the local member, I'm very pleased that Barrytown have been successful and that the council has put in supported them in recent years. The fact that Barrytown will be seen on the video printer on Saturday afternoons live on TV and as one of UEFA's national leagues internationally will increase our visibility as a town. So it's not just the, what I want is a commitment that the council, when they talk about senior officers, are not just talking about the facilities at Jenner Park, but also the tourism and the promotion of Barry as a location so that it fits in amongst our tourism profile, because it's something that will draw people to this town in the future.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Moving on then to question number 13 from Councillor Marnie to the Cabinet Member for Visible Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Marnie, for your question. I refer Councillor Marnie to the answer I gave earlier. 263 fixed penalty notices have been issued by 3GS during the 6-month period, October 2016 to March 2017. I've already provided a breakdown of these offences across the period Vale-wide. In terms of the Sully-Lavernock area, there were 3 fixed penalty notices issued, one for dog fouling, one for commercial waste offence and one for cigarette litter. A record is not kept of the number of patrols undertaken in any particular area. All that is currently recorded is the issuing of fixed penalty notices.
Supplementary.
Thank you very much for that. As I did predict, of course, most of this is for cigarette butts. I appreciate the difficulties, as you've explained, of catching people in the action and taking photographic evidence. But I'm not sure how it's easier to photograph somebody dropping a cigarette butt as to a McDonald's wrapper or a dog fouling, anything like that. Surely, on the dog fouling aspect, you only have to go to the haunts that are covered on a daily basis and photograph them incognito. I mean, that's got to be fairly easy, hasn't it? My question is, hasn't it?
I'd just like to point out, first of all, before we go into dog fouling again, that we have done quite a lot of litter picks, because I chair the Visible Services Committee, which we meet 3 monthly, and that's with Keep Wales Tidy, with Youth Offending Service, and the voluntary groups, and we go out in groups, and they do litter picks, and we've done a number of litter picks on the Sully area, also down Dinners Powers, been there, done it. We've also been down Lantford Major Beach recently, only a few weeks ago, which I couldn't join them because it was in the Purda period. But quite simply, we do a lot of litter picks. It's very difficult, as I said earlier, to nail people down. But if you have a particular area where you know someone is going every particular day, well, you only have to let us know, and then we can do something about it. Thank you.
That brings us on to question number 14, again from Councillor Marnie to the leader.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. I'd refer you back to the question that was raised at the last meeting of the Council, where a similar question was asked. It's on page 1544 from Councillor Franks to the Deputy Leader at the time. At that time, it was confirmed, and I will confirm it again, that discussions have taken place with the management of PACL to consider the long-term financial viability of the organisation, the latest of those discussions having taken place earlier this week. Members may also be aware that PACL have recently been awarded grant funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, which is to provide essential financial support to the organisation whilst it looks to develop a sustainable business model for the future.
Thank you very much. Of course, that grant is £126,000 for consultation over 18 months, an extraordinary amount of money. So it's not for the general running of the actual thing, is it? It's for consultation. Obviously, we talk about the Penarth Pier and the pavilion, of course, as part of that. It's the pavilion we're talking about here, of course. It's rather iconic and treasured by many residents of the Vale. Surely, as the landlords, and you say you are in discussion with PACL, it's got to be incumbent on the Vale to encourage, if not insist, that PACL adopt an immediate policy of openness and transparency in order to open up for examination and let everybody know what the problems are they're facing of what is clearly a failing organisation. The people of the Vale who are funding this to a large degree, and of course the council themselves, we all want to help. The people want to help. Until these problems of what has gone on and what is happening, causing the pavilion to be closed 3 times a week, causing the loss of the cinema, unless it's laid out and put in the open, how can the people of the Vale, and indeed the council, help to put right and ensure that we can have the whole thing up and operating again? So surely it's incumbent on you lot to insist that they actually come clean, because there's just a veil of silence from these people.
Well, as lot, I've actually, as I said, we had discussions with them in the past. We've had discussions with them at the moment. We've had discussions with them this week. PACL has received £126,000 for the coming 18-month period. I'm not aware that there are any commitments or conditions attached to that. The funding, as I understand it, is to be used to access external professional advice on all aspects of the business, indeed, in order for them to go forward. Now, they are a private organisation, in essence. they are fully meeting, as far as we can do, in the conditions of their lease. And as such, the operation of the management of the organisation is purely a matter for their board, which is their controlling body. So yes, we will discuss with them. Yes, we'll ask them to help them with their business case, as we have done and we will continue to do. But what I would also say is that this money, the £126,000, clearly isn't Vale's money. It's come from the lottery system. So yes, we will work with them. We can't insist they open their books to us. We would hope they would. But clearly, we will work with them to the best ability to continue, so that they can continue and be a viable organisation. We can only do as much as we can. So I don't know what answer you really want out of me. We are working with them. We've been there. We've helped them. We've given them advice. We assisted them with some of their bids. And clearly, if they weren't as viable as you suggest, then I would have hoped or would have thought that they wouldn't have received the grant funding that they have. And clearly, that is there for them to become a viable business, and hopefully they will do very quickly, if they're not already.
Brings us on to question number 15 then, again from Councillor Marnie, the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Education.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillor Marnie. As is often the case, the question has been framed within a number of inaccurate statements, and so I will first clarify the history and current situation. The original application for the erection of a new industrial building and the installation of a 9 megawatt wood-fuelled renewable energy plant in Barry Docks, a designated industrial area and not the heart of a residential area, was originally received in 2008 and refused by Planning Committee on grounds relating to its impact on the character of the area, the amenity of residents by reason of noise, traffic and pollution, and its potential impact on the important regeneration of Barry and the waterfront. It was refused. A subsequent appeal to Welsh Government was allowed by a planning inspector in July 2010, following a 3-day public inquiry. The decision and an award of costs of over £60,000 against the council meant that the planning inspector was clear that he did not agree that the application should be refused permission, and that in his view there was no good reason for refusing permission for the development. The closing comment of the planning inspector was, and I quote, "I consider that, subject to conditions and controls under other legislation, the proposed development would not have an unacceptable impact on the living conditions of existing or prospective residents." Now, we can all posture about this, and many have, and use the current situation for political means. But the truth is that our decision to reject the original application was overturned and cost this council over £60,000. A second application for a wood-fired renewable energy plant was submitted on 12th January 2015. It is vitally important that everyone understands that this application sought to amend the development previously approved on appeal. It should be noted that the application was for gasification with energy recovery waste facility, as only using wood waste and not an incinerator. The application was approved at committee on the 30th of July 2015. The application reference was 2015/00031/out, following a thorough and detailed airing of all the issues and with full regard to the previous clear decision of the appeal inspector. It is also notable that the above application was considered having full regard to the relevant regulations when it was determined that no environmental impact assessment was required. This was confirmed in the case of the last application on the 30th of July 2015 by Welsh Government. The developer is currently seeking consent for the environmental permit from Natural Resources Wales, which is an entirely separate process, with which the council is not involved or consulted upon. Therefore, I consider this council would be wise to leave the relevant regulatory body to determine the developer's licence in the knowledge that they are fully resourced for such applications, rather than wasting our ratepayers' money on matters this council has no control over.
That's not right.
Supplementary.
That's not right, Chair.
Can we... No, there's no points of order in questions and answers. No, I'm sorry. There is no point of order. There's no opportunity for other council members to come in. There is a question. There's been a response. The councillor has an opportunity to ask a supplementary question. Councillor Marnie.
Well, I'll leave the accusations of misleading to others. I'm sure they'll take that up themselves afterwards. Yes, you've given me a potted history. I'm well aware of the potted history. I'm well aware it cost £60,000. And I'm the last person to be wasting taxpayers' money. I'm the only one who keeps going on about the £250,000 you wasted on this shambles of a refurb.
Can we have the question, please, Councillor Marnie?
My question was, as you've evaded once again, is, has the Vale, since the granting of the planning application, employed the services of an expert on incineration biomass plants, stroke biomass plants, whatever you want to call them, to represent the interests of our residents? That was my question. Yet again, you've gone off one of your tangents as if nobody noticed. There's allegations of misleading.
You've asked the question, Councillor Marnie.
Thank you.
The Cabinet member will respond.
I'm not completely sure if the point of the question is to get an answer or to prove another opportunity to insult me, but we will carry on with that. It might have escaped your understanding that within planning there is set planning policy, set planning guidance. We decide things governed on planning policy. When it comes down to environmental issues, they are passed on to Natural Resources Wales. That is exactly what we're doing. I don't intend to waste money.
Can you please sit down, Councillor Marnie?
Here we go again.
Councillor Marnie, can you please sit down and you're having the reply?
I don't think there's a lot of point. Thank you.
No. Moving on to question number 16, again from Councillor Marnie to the Cabinet Member for Building Services, Highways and Transportation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Dealing with the Barry Waterfront Consortium and their appointed contractor for the construction of the Waterfront Link Road as part of the highway agreements for conversion of both Paget Road, Plymouth Road and Cosy Corner junctions to traffic signal control has proved challenging. Council officers have continually monitored and engaged and encouraged the consortium and their contractors to undertake and complete construction of various aspects of the Barry Waterfront development in a timely manner to improve the highway network and minimise the inconvenience to the residents and visitors. And it has resulted in the new Waterfront Link Road being opened earlier than programmed to one-way traffic before the summer holidays of 26.
Can I just stop you there, Cabinet Member? Can we please respect the people that are speaking? No, it's not a question of you being able to ask for accuracy. It's up to the Cabinet Member to respond to the question. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. I'm chairing this meeting. I'm insisting that people are allowed to speak and that the people that have asked the question can hear what's being said. Cabinet Member, carry on, please.
Thank you. It was opened earlier than programmed to one-way traffic before the summer holidays of 2016 and subsequently to two-way prior to last Christmas, which has benefited residents and visitors to the popular Barry Island resort. Regrettably, the performance of the consortium's contractor undertaking the Section 278 highways agreement for conversion of both Paget Road and Plymouth Road to Cosy Corner junctions to traffic signal control has meant delays. The Paget Road, Plymouth Road were completed last summer, but the signals were not or could not be turned on because they were linked to the Cosy Corner signals, which were not completed. The completion of works at Cosy Corner have been delayed from last autumn to the end of last year, then to mid-March this year, and the latest position is that they are expected to be completed in the first week in May. What I can say is that were it not for the actions of this council and its officers, work would not have advanced to the degree that it has over recent years.
Councillor Marnie, supplementary.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure what to make of all that. Surely you can appreciate, I can appreciate there being problems with the project and with a job, and sometimes something has to settle in or is associated to electrical work somewhere. But when the public see the site empty for week after week after week with not a workman or woman on site, where they're entitled to ask what's going on. You're almost claiming credit fit for the Vale being that. Maybe I'll put my question. Can we be assured that these contractors don't work on a Vale project again?
If it were so simple, Councillor, I would certainly endorse that request, but it's not our project, and that's been the problem. It has been theirs.
Moving on then to question number 17, again from Councillor Marnie to the Cabinet Member for Building Services, Highways and Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. As someone who lives there, I'm sure you will understand the layout and the intended direction of travel. But it does seem to be a little bit of a rerun of your previous question, and I'll refer you to that answer. But I must repeat that the Section 278 Highways Agreement for conversion of Oak Paget Road and Plymouth Road and Cosy Corner junctions to traffic signal has been continually delayed by the consortium and their contractors, and it is currently not complete. The Paget Road, Plymouth Road layout was completed last summer, but the signals could not be turned on because they're linked to the Cosy Corner signals. And for your further information, the junction is still the responsibility of the consortium and their contractor until successfully completed, and is currently operating under temporary arrangements as an uncontrolled T-junction with traffic from Plymouth Road having to give way to traffic on Paget Road. The situation is not ideal, and it is not representative of the proposed final operation of the completed junction, which will operate under traffic signal control when newly installed signals are able to be turned on. And until that time, as explained previously, the Council and its office continue to liaise and try to bring as much pressure as possible on the responsible parties to complete the works and rectify the situation at their earliest opportunity.
My one point is, and perhaps I can ask you this, is the alignment coming from Asda to the railway bridge, if you like, where you're going to the railway bridge. If you're driving along, it doesn't hit. You're hitting your natural driving line is clipping the box where it's got the cycle lane. So my question would be, can perhaps a highways official or somebody go along and examine that and see if they have any suggestions or observations on that?
Certainly.
Right, that brings us on to the last question this evening, is question number 18, again from Councillor Marnie to the leader.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. I am happy and I can confirm. People want to hear or not? I can confirm that any complaints or concerns against any senior officer, or any officer for that matter, within the Council are taken extremely seriously and progressed through the appropriate channels. The procedure is one that has been in place for some time, and in every situation is dealt with accordingly and, in my opinion, correctly.
So just to confirm, you're quite happy that no independent body examines any complaint. You're quite happy with it done in-house, with senior colleagues investigating each other.
I am happy to confirm that there are appropriate provisions in place that consider all such inquiries from members and are acceptable as you put it. However, perhaps you're not aware of this, the level of any inquiry, if one is necessary or appropriate, will depend upon the circumstances and of the member's inquiry, the nature of the complaint, the level of the officer within the management structure, and the scale of the circumstances. Each case is considered individually, and structures, you may not know it, but are in place to escalate any inquiry if deemed necessary. It's all in the Constitution.
Right, that brings us to the end of this evening's meeting. Thank you very much to all councillors, and I've already said that I'm wishing a fond farewell to many of you, and I will be back on the 24th of May to hand over my change to whoever the mayor is going to be, and I certainly look forward to that evening as well. Goodbye, and thank you.